So folks, we're back for another card review. Pretty crazy legendary here. A few other interesting cards to talk about as well. This is Sheldris Moontree. He's like Druid Santa Claus. 8 mana, 5/5, Battle Cry. The next 3 spells you draw are cast when drawn. So pretty crazy effect here. Yes, that means if you play this and then you guess the weight into, I don't know, Survival of the Fittest, and then, I don't know, Guardian Animals. Yeah, that's right. He's going to automatically cast your Survival of the Fittest for free, and he's going to cast your Guardian Animals for free, and you're going to have an enormous, insanely buffed board, and you're going to cheat 18 mana, and then, you know, there's still one more to go, so you draw a card naturally the next turn, and it's another Survival of the Fittest. Oh my god, what have you done, you monster? You've stolen the game. So Scam Druid is on a whole new level here, potentially with a card like Sheldris Moontree. Now, of course, that was a perfect example, right? You're not always going to get Survival of the Fittest into Guardian Animals stuff, but you could see that happening. It's not impossible by any means. We've got some Druid decks that are already isolated down to some pretty big spells. That said, you know, there's a challenge here, right? Like, you probably are going to have trouble just spending 8 mana on Sheldris Moontree and not drawing something immediately. So I use like the guess the weight example. And, you know, potentially that takes 10 total mana. So you either need to wait a bit till it's turn 10. You need to have a Lightning Bloom ready to go, something there. To cheese this out as quickly as possible. And if you're running Lightning Blooms and guess the weights and those sorts of things, right, when you draw cards, you're not always going to get high cost spells. You're not even always going to get spells. Sometimes you might get minions as well. So there's a real deck construction challenge here to get this consistently enough. But if you are in a world where you have the time to play Sheldris Moontree and then on the following turn do something like Primordial Protector into Survival of the Fittest, you're going to summon a 10-drop off your Primordial Protector. You're going to auto cast your Survival of the Fittest that you drew, because this guy's going to make it cast when drawn for just like the biggest board ever. So, you know, in Druid's ability to take a downturn now and then, is Sheldris pop off enough that it's worth the sacrifice of constructing your deck in a fairly specific fashion to cheat out some of these crazy big Druid spells? I don't know the answer to that question, right? It's so hard to envision what a deck would look like here. But I will say that, you know, cheating 25, 30 mana off this card, even cheating, you know, 8 to 10 mana off some more mid-rangey spells like Arbor Ups and stuff, right? It doesn't have to be absolutely bonkers things. Just Arbor Ups off this. Cenarian Wards. Like, there's a few great options as you look through Druid spells, as you can see I'm doing here on the other screen. You could cheese a Celestial Alignment for some crazy plays. You could play this guy post-Celestial Alignment. I don't know if that'd be as exciting, but hey, possibilities exist. Kodo Mount's out there now, the new Druid spell we're going to talk about in a minute. So, potential's there, right? There's just some crazy pop-off. I think it'll be a consistency issue and a deck building issue that limit this guy's potential. He's pretty much in exactly one deck. If that deck's not good, some kind of big spell cheese Druid thing, Sheldris isn't going to be a very good card. But boy, is he a fun one, is he exciting, and he is absolutely Druid Santa Claus. All right, so next up here is a priest spell, and Blizzard, I thought we had a deal. I thought we were gonna get less generation in priest, but here we go, discovering more minions for priest. I'll let you guys sort that out with Papa Blizzard. But this is Call of the Grave, 1 mana shadow priest spell. It allows you to discover a Death Rattle minion, so you're making something, and then there's a little bonus here. If you have enough mana to play the minion that you discovered, you will also trigger its Death Rattle. So not only generation, but sometimes an instant bonus effect on this card as well. So a couple use cases for this, right? Say you play it on turn 1, you're not going to discover a minion with Death Rattle, so you just use it as a resource generation card. Maybe you're happy to fill your curve and just find a play for turn 2 or turn 3. Maybe fill in the gaps on your curve. You've also kind of got some mid-game plays, perhaps, where you grab this. You have like 5 mana the turn, right? You want to grab a 4-drop, so you grab Rush, Murloc, Death Rattle guy, and you not only get that in hand, but you also get a 4/3 with Rush, and you're pretty happy with a nice mid-game play. And you've also sort of got late-game plays as well, where you can grab pretty much almost anything outside of a 10-drop, and you're going to be able to get potentially a really high-value minion. Think about like Plagued Proto-Drake, for instance. You're going to play Call of the Grave. You're going to summon a 7-drop for 1 mana, as long as you open your turn with Call of the Grave. And then you're also going to get a Plagued Protodrake in hand, and you could play a Plagued Protodrake. So you could just dump like 2 giant minions on board, all off the back of a single 1-mana card. So it can really help you fill in and maybe do some crazy broken stuff later in the game. There are also a lot of potentials for like heals with this card, say Light Shower Elemental. You can play this, discover a Light Shower Elemental. That's instantly going to heal you and your board for 8, and you're also going to be able to plop a Light Shower Elemental down to fill your curve and get another 8 healing on board as well. So there's some potential just like enormous swing turns off the back of this card. Now, because Discover is no longer biased towards class cards like it used to be, you're just as likely to get neutral cards as class cards, and in fact more likely in this case to get neutral cards because Death Rattle minions are more common in the neutral set. There are some pretty low quality Death Rattles out there, so I do have a little bit of a concern on the quality, the average quality of cards. There's a lot of like 2-drops and low cost cards, but even some of those really aren't that bad if you look at it. For instance, like Loot Hoarder. Call of the Grave is like a 1-mana, get a Loot Hoarder and draw a card. That's not a bad cycle. And then there's like Explosive Sheep. You could just get a 2 damage AoE off your Call of the Grave if you have enough mana to play Explosive Sheep. So that's maybe decent in the late game, but also like turn 3, Call of the Grave, Explosive Sheep could be nuts to help you stabilize against an aggro board. So, you know, it's a little bit hard in some ways to have enough mana left, so you kind of have to open turns of this, but you kind of want to do that anyway when you're generating cards, discovering things to help you guide your turn. So that's not a bad fit. It's really just about, you know, lining up the right breakpoints for this where certain powerful options exist and sort of understanding that. And I do think there's just kind of natural check on this card where, you know, early in the game, you want to get stuff that you can play to instantly activate, but there's a lot of higher cost stuff still in the pool that you might want to take because it's a better minion. So if you play this on like turn 3 and you get Light Shower Elemental, you're kind of torn because you don't get the instant activation, but you get the good minion. And then later in the game when you play this, there's still a lot of low cost stuff in the pool. You might get offered like only 3-drops and not get one of the big awesome things. So there's not as much value packed into this. So that range of Death Rattle minions that exist, particularly in the neutral set, might limit what Call of the Grave can do a little bit. That said, I think it's still just resource generation. It's really flexible. It has some crazy pop-off potential. I still think this will be a pretty nice tool for Priest, not to mention it's a shadow spell. So if you're building something like a Benedictus Shadow Priest deck, this might just be one of the options you need to go with to make sure you have some flexibility, some discover, some value generation in your shadow deck. So you can definitely see some crazy potential in this one and some deck fits as well, whether that's just a generic value priest or a shadow priest. Keep an eye on Call of the Grave. All right, so next up here is the Rat King for Hunter, a 5-mana 5/5 beast with Rush and Death Rattle. Go dormant, revive after 5 friendly minions die. So nice little repeatable minion here. Real sticky dude, keeps coming back, and he has Rush, so he can take some trades every time he does come back. And seems like a fairly natural fit in things like token hunters that are summoning a lot of hyenas off their Kolkar pack runners or whatever other hyena summoning cards that exist. We're also, I'm going to tease you now, going to talk about this card, which also summons a bunch of token rats as well. So these sort of wide board, small minion trading decks could help fuel the Rat King to keep reviving it time and time again. And in theory, that's pretty cool, right? You invest 5 mana, you just keep getting back this nice reactive minion. It's taking trades, it's keeping boards in check. There's a lot to like about that. But unfortunately for me, I think this card has a real class/archetype hurdle to overcome in that usually Hunter's not looking to stretch games out super far and extract value from a card like this over multiple turns over the course of a game. So in other words, this keeps getting better and better. The more minions you're trading in, the more your minions are dying, the longer the game goes, you're going to have more time to get more summons off the Rat King. So you might need to see this 2, 3, 4 times to really make it feel like an excellent card. Whereas if it's just not coming back at all, or it's coming back once, you'd probably rather just have a Trampling Rhino that ends the game and wins you the game. For this to really feel like a powerful card, games have to go on for a long time. And Hunter historically has not really shown a tendency to stretch games out. Only cards like Deathstalker Rexar have really made that possible in the back of things like lifesteal minions. But without the life gain or typical control tools that other classes have access to, Rat King might have trouble extracting enough value out of itself to really make it worth it. And Hunter historically just wants to push harder, go faster, hit face. And even the decks right now that are summoning lots of hyenas and going wider on the board it's a face deck. It still wants to hit people really hard, and cards like Trampling Rhino at 5 are better than the Rat King because it's doing damage immediately. It's not just rush. And if you have to wait a few turns to get your Rat King back, that's a really long time to keep investing for Hunter to not have won the game already. Plus, minion sighing encourages trading. If you're not the one doing the trading, your opponent's dictating when your opponent's or your minions die, they might be able to kill your Rat King pretty easily, thus negating the upside of the rush aspect on the minion. Can't take value trades. So all in all, this one just feels like it's too late in the game to really make an impact, or takes too long for Hunter to get enough out of it, essentially, which I think will leave it to the wayside for most Hunter decks. They're just going to want to do things that are more active, more immediate, more damage focused. There are a few things that could change that. You know, we talked about on stream, like if a the Hunter quest line comes along and it gives Beast charge or something as its game effect. This would be nuts, of course. Every time it revived, it would have charge, and that would certainly help accelerate it a little bit beyond the rush and make it more in line with what Hunter typically wants to do. But for now, the feasibility on this card just seems really low because Hunter doesn't historically make these things work very well. Of course, cards in the future could change that, whether this set or in the future, and there are more token cards being printed, but as we'll talk about here in a second, I don't think those really help support this either. So that said, next up here is Rats of Extraordinary, not unusual size, and this is a 6 mana spell for Hunter, and it summons you 7/1/1 rats. And as you can see here from the token, those don't have any effects. They're just straight vanilla 1/1 rats. And it reads, any that can't fit on the battlefield go to your hand with +4/+4. So say for instance you have 2 minions on board, you cast Rats of Extraordinary Size, you summon 5 rats on board, and 2 rats will be added to your hand that are now 1 mana 5/5s. And certainly 1 mana 5/5s, pretty nuts, right? Those are actually really cool. That's a nice minion, but keep in mind, again, they're just minions and they're just stats and they just kind of sit there. The rats themselves that you're summoning, very low impact. They're just a board of 1/1s. So, you know, compared to all the other tokens that Hunter's summoning with Rush, these are very low impact and very low reactivity, and just kind of sit there for your opponent to remove them. Now, when your opponent does remove them, sure, you can reload with some 5/5s. Maybe that's a sticky enough board. Maybe that's overwhelming enough. But I have to ask the same question of this card as with the previous card. By the time you get to turn 6 in Hunter, is just dumping a pretty weak stat play turn after turn going to be enough? And maybe the second round where you dump some 5/5s, maybe that's enough. But summoning 5/1/1s isn't really very interesting on turn 6. That's a lot of mana commitment. And then a couple 5/5s the turn after that, while efficient, still isn't really doing all that much. There might be better ways to spend your mana just going over the top, hitting them harder. And having a 6 mana spell stuck in your hand for the first part of the game can be really bad and hamper you a lot in faster Hunter decks. So again, this encourages, I think, a slower style, a more grindy style of just reload, 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 redevelop, 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 alongside cards like the Rat King, the 1/1s, the 5/5s. It's just kind of wave after wave of stuff. Might work if you get enough of that, if you reach a critical mass, kind of like token druids do, where you just keep reloading boards and getting one to finally stick, and then that's sort of what overwhelms your opponent. There's always that possibility, but Hunter hasn't shown a tendency to do that so far. Again, this one just feels at odds with Hunter's traditional game plans and how Hunter likes to play, so it's going to take a real shift in what Hunter decks look like for a card like this to get there. Now, you know, it's enough total stats and some upside that it's not impossible. I just don't think it's very likely. All right, so next up here, we've got Druids Mount card, Kodo Mount, 4 mana spell, give a minion +4/+2 and rush. When it dies, summon a Kodo. That's Guff's Kodo. It's a 4/2 with rush, matching up to its buff, as all other mounts have thus far. And this card's a tough one for me. I look at it and I think, man, that is a lot of raw stuff for 4 mana, right? You're getting like a nice buff, almost on par with something like Blessing of Kings. Just, you know, a lot of high pressure attack value. And then you've also got this sticky minion behind. Both sides of this have rush, so it's getting the ability to trade with stuff right away. So, you know, this could be more of an aggressive card. If you stuck a 3-drop, you play this, you just hit really hard with like a sticky buffed minion. If your opponent clears that, they've got this other thing to deal with, almost like, you know, magnetizing a piloted shredder to something or whatever, right? And then On the other side of it, if you're behind and you need to, this can also be like a Faceless Corruptor or something where you play a tiny small minion, a 1-drop or something, you buff it, you take a trade, and then your Guff's Kodo can also take a trade as well, allowing you to potentially swing a board back. And I mean, if you look, it's, you know, 8-4 in total stats with 2 split rushes that trades really efficiently, all for 4 mana. And that sounds really good. It's a lot of output baked into this card. So all that said, I'm still trying to figure out where you play it. You know, Token Druid traditionally values wide board buffs more than a single unit buff. Rampier Druids are probably just using this mana to overgrowth in many cases. So it's almost like we need some kind of mid-range Druid to come in and make sense of this, or something that values spells. There's like nature spell synergies, but this isn't a nature spell. So I don't know if that's an angle with like Anacondra or that side of things with like Jombe Druid that's popping up. So it's going to need a new Druid deck as we move forward into a new expansion. Are there going to be enough new things to support that and push in this direction specifically to sort of upset the 2 kinds of Druid archetypes that exist now? And I feel bad because I kind of said the same thing about the last 2 cards. You know, these seem okay, but not going to fit their archetypes. I think this one seems even better, honestly. Very, very efficient for 4 mana. But again, it sort of feels awkward. And I hate to use that criticism against every single card in the video almost, but I think it's true in these cases. We're in a mid rotation cycle right now, so it might take a year or more for these cards to pop up. That said, I'm still going to give this one a good score because I think it could find a home eventually. You know, rotation comes along a year from now. This card might just go into an aggro Druid that just wants stats on board and buffs and sticky boards. This would be a perfect fit for that to potentially push some immediate damage or catch up later. So I like this card just because the numbers on it are so big and so efficient. I just don't know if we're going to see it for the better part of a year, but just keep an eye out for this one somewhere down the road because I think it's probably just too much stuff to ignore forever. Sheldris Moontree is a 3-star card. Or maybe a 12-star card if he's broken. We'll see. Call of the Grave is a 4-star card. The Rat King is a 3-star card. Rats of Extraordinary Size is a 2-star card. Kodo Mount is a 4-star card. And there you go, folks. That wraps it up for this review. As always, of course, share your thoughts on these cards. What did you like? What did you hate? What do you think is going to be super fun to play, even if it's not good? Or vice versa, what are you going to hate, even if it's super powerful? I want to hear all those thoughts and more in the comments down below. Thanks so much, as always, for watching. Stay tuned for more reviews. And until next time, game on.